Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So I first have to apologize because I've been a little MIA lately, and that's just because August was just a horrible month for me. It was a horrible reading month and I felt like just really burnt out and tired and super stressed. So as I mentioned on the channel before, I work in retail, and the back to school season and holiday are our two biggest seasons of the year. So I'm just finishing up the back to school season and then prepping for holiday. So I was just feeling really super tired, and I'm actually on vacation right now from work. I took a week off, and I always take this week off every year after we come out of that back to school season. So I just took a few days to rest and relax and kind of recuperate from everything. So I'm feeling much better now, but let's get into this very embarrassing reading month that I had in August. I almost didn't want to make this video, but we all have bad reading months, right? So why not discuss it with you guys and let you know what happened. So this is the first time that I ever had 2 DNFs in the run of a month. That's never happened before, and I felt so bad about it, but at the same time, like, if you're not enjoying something, it's just as well to put it aside and either take a break from reading or pick up something else. So the first book that I DNF'd was The One That Got Away, and this is a women in horror anthology, and I was really wanting to love this book. And I didn't stop reading it because it was horrible. Had nothing to do with that. It just, the stories, I read the first, I think, 4 or 5 stories in the book, and they just weren't for me. It wasn't what I was expecting, and it's not something that I would typically pick up and read. So I decided just to put it down, and I will let you know, there's nothing wrong with this book whatsoever. The stories are written really well, but it's kind of on that sort of weird fiction side, and it's just not what I was looking for. So I went ahead and put it down. But if you're still wanting to go ahead and pick this one up, please do so. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the stories. It just wasn't for me. So the next DNF that I had, on the other hand, was one that I stopped reading because I just wasn't enjoying it at all. I didn't care for the story, and I had a few issues with it, and that one is The Den in the Dark by Courtney Gould. So with this one, I only got like maybe 50 to 75 pages in, and there were 2 of my biggest pet peeves in anything that I read that were really strong currents in this book. So the first one, and of course this is geared towards kind of the YA demographic, and the first pet peeve that I have, and I've mentioned it before, is whiny characters. And the daughter of the 2 men who are kind of paranormal investigators, she was just really super whiny. She had attitude, and it was just like chapter after chapter after chapter, it was the same thing, and it was really annoying me. And she's probably her half of the story. She's like the main character. She's the one who they're following. And then so this story is told kind of in dual perspectives, and then the other perspective is also from a teenage girl, and she is someone who lives in the city or the town of Snakebite, and her boyfriend has disappeared. So they have a memorial service for him. They haven't found him, haven't found a body, haven't found him alive, but they wanted to have a memorial service to kind of have closure. And this is right at the beginning of the book, by the way. It's not a spoiler at all. But my issue with it, and this is another issue that I have with a lot of YA, is that they make it seem like this 16 or 17-year-old girl, her boyfriend was the center of her entire universe. Her whole life revolved around this boy, and it was just going on and on and on and on. And my issue with that is that when you're telling stories to young women, who this kind of the demographic of the book would be geared towards, I really hate it when they have these characters that are teenagers themselves and relationships are the center of their universe. It's kind of like they're trying to portray that all young women should have a significant other and they're the complete center of their universe. And to me, a young girl should not be in that situation until she's a little bit older. So, and it's not going to bother everybody. The same thing with the whiny characters. It's not going to bother everybody, but for me, those are two things that I really hate in books, and both of those were in this one. So I went ahead, and after 50 to 75 pages, I just kind of put it down, and I was like, okay, I'm done with this one. I don't think I'm going to pick it up again, just because it was frustrating me. So 2 DNFs this month, like I said, but for very different reasons. So the first one, like I said, it's just that the stories weren't really for me. It was written fantastically, and of course it's important to support women in horror, but stories just weren't for me. The other one, I had issues with some of the plot points and the characters, so I put it down for that reason. So the first book that I did finish this month is The Remaking by Macleod Chapman. And this author also wrote Whisper Down the Lane, which is one of my favorite reads for the entire year this year. So as I mentioned before, I was kind of really slumpy. I had been in a reading slump for a while, so I wanted to pick up something that I thought was going to be really good and written well and an intriguing story. But unfortunately, this book I only gave 2 stars. So the reason why I gave it 2 stars was because the story, when you're reading the synopsis, the story is very compelling. It's a really interesting story, but it's almost like he had an idea and didn't execute it well. The writing, I found, wasn't very good. It was kind of annoying in places. It was very repetitive. There was a lot of filler in here, and like I said, the story itself of, you know, like this urban legend of these witches that were burned at the stake, and then they keep retelling these stories, and you know, it has consequences for doing the retells of the stories and everything. So that was fantastic. I loved that premise, but it just wasn't executed very well. So for example, there's a young girl and she's being led by the hand into the woods by basically the ghost of one of these witches who had died. And the way that it is written, it's almost written in like a soliloquy. It's the way the story is written is almost like it's going on inside the character's head. There's not really a whole lot of dialogue, and there's just these long sections of, you know, the thoughts that are going on in people's heads. So for example, this little girl is being dragged away by this ghost of this witch, and she is like, all I can think is I want to go home, 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 home. And like it's on different lines, so you have the word home written like 5 or 6 times. She's like, you know, I'm cold and I can see my breath and I don't know who this is. Home, home, home. I want to go home. And then it will go into another thought. Home, home, home. And that happened a lot in this book. And so I have to say I was so disappointed, because Whisper Down the Lane was written so well and it was such a good story. That I had high hopes for this one, and it just didn't pan out. So unfortunately I can't recommend this one, just because there was a lot of filler. The writing was poor. The story wasn't executed properly in my opinion, so only 2 stars for The Remaking. So like I've mentioned many times on the channel before, when I'm in a reading slump, I like to read a lot of short stories because there's not a whole lot of commitment to it, and you can just sit down and read one story at a time from beginning to end. So one book that I did pick up was Campfire Ghost Stories by Joanne Christensen. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. The only reason why I gave it 3.5 and not higher than that was because a lot of the stories in here are urban legends that you know very well. So for example, there's a story, I think it's the very first one in here, about a man who's driving down the road, and of course there's a woman hitchhiking on the side of the road. He picks her up and, you know, offers to take her home, and then she disappears out of the car. Turns out she had died years earlier. So those types of stories that are very familiar, these urban legends, there's a lot of them in here. And so most of these stories I had heard before. There's Bloody Mary in here, there's this hitchhiker one, you know, the hook, the hand with a hook, the serial killer, there's that one in here. So they're very familiar, which is kind of nice on one aspect, because you know, I know that I like these urban legends. They're very familiar, they're very cozy. But on the other hand, you know, I was looking for stories that I hadn't read before. But I have to say that the stories were written very, very well. So that very first one about the hitchhiker, just the way that it was told, the way it was written, you kind of tumble into, you know, this spooky atmosphere and this spooky world. So I really enjoyed how each story was written. So even though they were very familiar and they were ones that I knew, I did really enjoy the writing. The other thing that I liked about this book is at the very beginning, there's a whole section on how to properly tell stories and atmosphere and the voice and stuff like that. So I really liked that aspect. And then, you know, there were different sections within the book. So there was a section on specifically ghost stories. There was a section on ghost stories that were good to tell by firelight and stuff like that. And they had like these little introductions, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. So if you're into urban legends and that sort of thing, I highly recommend picking this one up. It was very comfy and cozy. And then the last full book that I read this month is The Last Apprentice, The Revenge of the Witch by Joseph Delaney. And this is the first one in the Last Apprentice series. And this was a reread for me. I knew that I was going to enjoy it. I had read it when it first came out back in the early 2010s. And this series is really good. The adventures are really good. The creatures that are in here are really good. I love how the atmosphere is written. Again, this is another one where you kind of tumble into this sort of medieval world where, you know, everything is lit by candlelight and you know, it's very almost like gas lamp, but not really. But just sort of aspects of it are. And I have to say, even though this is the middle grade series, parts of this can be quite scary and quite gruesome. So there's a section sort of at the beginning of when the spook takes Tom Ward on as his apprentice, and he takes him to an old abandoned house, and he basically locks him in the basement with just a candle stub, and you know, there's ghosts down there, and Tom is, it's a very claustrophobic when you're reading it. You're scared, you feel for Tom. So when Tom finally gets out of the situation and the spook tells him that the man that's down there, who is a ghast, not a ghost, but the same sort of thing, he is someone who had lived previous, and he had a very pretty wife, and the spook is very wary of pretty women. A little bit misogynistic, I have to say, but given the time period that this is written in, you can kind of understand that. And so this man had, you know, his wife, and he suspected that his wife was cheating on him. So she came home one night and he basically bashed her in the head with a rock, and he didn't kill her, but she was incapacitated, and he dragged her into the basement and dug a hole, but she could still tell what was going on. She just couldn't move, she couldn't speak, but she knew that he was going to bury her alive. And so parts of these stories are they can be very scary if you're talking about, you know, young teenagers and sort of that demographic that it's geared towards. You know, as an adult, I just found it really fun and really cozy. But again, you know, there's aspects in these books that can be quite terrifying. So I really, really enjoy this series. You know, the entire series I have to give 4 stars. I am going to be reading the second book in the series this month in September. So really, really glad that I picked this up, because it was one that I sat down and I kind of just read right through in a couple of days. It's a very easy read, and so it really helped me with that slumpiness that I was in. So highly recommend this series. And then I had this book on my TBR. So it's Wordsworth Classics, Classic Victorian and Edwardian Ghost Stories by Rex Collings, and I was so looking forward to reading this book. And the reason why I didn't, I started the first story, but the print in this book is minuscule. It's absolutely minuscule, and even with my glasses, I was having a lot of trouble reading it, and it was it wasn't an enjoyable experience, so I just put it down. I want to see if I can find a different edition of this book. Hopefully the print is a little bit bigger. Unfortunately, from what I can see, they don't have it on Kindle, so I'm just going to put this one aside, and hopefully if I can find another edition, then I'll stick it back on my TBR. So since this wrap-up was kind of anticlimactic, I'm not gonna lie, I had some terrible reads. I had 2 DNFs. I've never had that before. Let's get a little bit more cheerful with doing a little mini haul of things that I found for Halloween. And I'm the type of person that I love shopping for Halloween decor, because for me, I love things that are all year round spooky. Things that I can keep out, things that I can use all year long. It doesn't have a whole lot of pumpkins and that sort of thing. I'm really not into glitter. The gnomes I don't understand whatsoever. So I did find some spooky home decor that I think you guys will enjoy. So I wanted to share that with you. So the first thing that I got was this Witch's Brew mug. So I have a collection of spooky mugs, of course. And this one is completely differently shaped from any of the other ones that I have. So I really enjoyed this. I have a couple that say Witch's Brew already, but I really liked the shape of this mug. And then from the same line, I also bought this canister that says Trick or Treat. So this is a ceramic canister, and I keep my Nespresso pods in here. So I really liked this set. You know, this is very Halloween-y. I'm gonna see if I can find a spooky canister to keep my pods in, you know, just for all year round, and just keep this one for Halloween season. But really enjoyed these, and I think I was pretty lucky to pick them up because they only had one of them at the HomeSense that I was at. So excited to have these. And then also from HomeSense, I got this mug. So it has bats and spider webs, and on the bottom here it says just add scream and sugar. So I'm not one really for, you know, the messages and the writing and stuff, but I loved the bats and the spider webs, and I love the shape of this mug. It's probably one of my favorites, so I just had to get it. And there's also a bowl that goes with this as well. So it's kind of the reverse print, so it has white on the outside and it has black bats and spider webs on it, but it's in the dishwasher right now. So it came kind of as a set, and I got that at HomeSense as well. So also from HomeSense this year, I got this travel mug or tumbler. So this one is made out of bamboo, and it has the grip on it that you can take off if you want, and it just has some jack-o'-lanterns and some vertical stripes. So really liked this one. And again, this one is, you know, for actual Halloween season. The other ones are all year round spooky. So I was excited to have that one. And then I think my favorite out of all of them, I got this one from Spirit. So Spirit Halloween opened here the last week of August, and I took a rundown. They didn't have all of their stuff out yet. I'm hoping to get at least one more trip in before Halloween rolls around. But I did grab this mug. So this has the Sanderson Museum of Witchcraft, Salem, Massachusetts. So this, of course, is from the movie Hocus Pocus. And it has Hocus Pocus written on the back, of course, with Disney. And this mug is absolutely massive. So it's gray on the outside, black on the inside. And I love this size of mug for my tea. So I usually have a smaller one for my coffee. But when I have tea, I'll make kind of like a double batch, like put 2 tea bags in here and fill it up. And I got 2 more of this size last year from Spirit Halloween. So I had to come home with at least 1 more. And this placard, I've always wanted to get one of the wall signs with the Sanderson Museum on it, but I thought, you know, having it in a mug, I can use it all year round. So really happy to have all of these mugs for my spooky mug collection. And then staying with the homewares, so I also got this from HomeSense. So it's this iridescent glass bowl, and it has skeleton hands, and this is super heavy. So it has 3 metal skeleton hands going around. So I thought that this would be perfect for just chips or popcorn or whatever for movie nights. And again, this is all year round spooky. And one of the other things that I'm trying to do as well is to make sure that I'm buying things that aren't cheaply made, just like with plastic or whatever. So this is glass and, like I said, really heavy metal. And I just love this piece. So really iridescent, but I love the skeleton hands probably the most. It's really cool piece, and this piece is definitely something that I spent a bit more money on, but I just couldn't leave it on the shelf, so this came home with me. And then the last piece of homewares that I bought is this votive holder. So these have little cauldrons hanging from them with jack-o'-lantern faces, and this is, it's made out of metal, so it's like it's colored in bronze, and I really loved these. I thought they were so cute, and they would be awesome as votive holders, which is what they're meant for, but I thought even putting wrapped candies in here would be really cool, and putting out for the weekend of Halloween. So, and again, this is all year spooky for me, so, and if I don't want to see the jack-o'-lantern faces, I can just turn it around and have the plain cauldrons. So that's it for the homeware stuff, and I have just a couple more things to show you from Spirit Halloween. So 2 of the categories that I have for kind of all year round spooky are my mug collection and my horror t-shirt collection. So this one I thought was so cute. So this has Adopt a Familiar. So it has all of these spooky animals on the front, and on the bottom it says Black Magic Animal Rescue. So I thought this was super cool. Number 1, because I'm a practicing witch, and number 2, because I am a full believer in adopting animals. All of my dogs that I've had have been rescue animals. So I thought this t-shirt was really super fitting. So I absolutely love this one. And the other t-shirt that I got, because I've gotten quite a few spooky t-shirts this year, the other one that I got is actually in the wash, but I'll insert a picture up here. It has Ghostface, but it's kind of in a tarot theme. So Ghostface is on a tarot card, and this one actually glows in the dark as well, which, I mean, I don't really care if it glows in the dark. I just thought that the design was really awesome. So 2 new spooky shirts to add to the collection. And then the last thing that I got from Spirit was one of their fleecy blankets. Hopefully I can find a picture of this one because I can't get it in the frame of the camera here, but hopefully I can find a picture to insert for you. So this one also has Ghostface on it, and this one is brand new this year. And when I picked out the t-shirt, the girl actually asked me was I interested in the blanket, and I just had to take it home with me. So I've been snuggling up in this just about every evening, and if you've never tried their fleece blankets, they're actually quite nice. So hopefully this will hold up, you know, from being used all year long. So there you guys go. I had a very crappy reading month in August, but I did find some cool Halloween stuff to add to my spooky t-shirt and spooky mug collection, and a couple of other things as well. So August wasn't all bad. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below because you know I love chatting with you. But until next time, stay spooky everybody. Bye.